Good morning. Welcome to Thought for the Day. I thought today we go back in time a bit to February 1989 when I was in Minneapolis. It was a Saturday and I'd been invited to a breakfast meeting by the person who'd taken me up there the night before. Turns out he was the PA of one of the chairmen. They're called chairmen, although they're chiefs of he was the chief of the Winnebago Nation. And they were hosting a meeting of the nations, which was taking place in Minneapolis. And about 30 chiefs came together and we were all sitting around having breakfast. They were there because they were talking about the land rights and everything that had been promised to them hundred or so years before, and nobody had actually delivered on that. So it was lands that they owed, they owned, and they were there to discuss this. So I was sitting in a room at a table where there's all these different chiefs, and I was introduced by the chief of the Winnebago Nation as his friend and guest from England. So everybody wanted to come up and say, good morning, hello, how are you? And I'm shaking my hand. It's surreal. I'm shaking my hands with people from tribes that I can only remember as a child watching cowboy films. And we're sitting there and we're having breakfast, just like we've been friends for years, chatting about loads of things. And it's quite surreal. And suddenly, telephone's brought in the room, and one of the chiefs that's sitting next to me is told, you have a telephone call, sir. So he takes a telephone call, and it goes something like this. Yes? Yeah, I'm at breakfast at the moment. Yeah. Yeah, that'll be okay, fine. Yeah, bye. Okay. That's it. Phone gets put down, phone gets taken away. He carries on eating a bit of breakfast, and he turns round and he says, somebody said to him, who was that on the phone? He said, it's George. George, I'm thinking, okay, George. And George, yeah, what do you want? Oh, he's asking if he could hold some military flying exercises over my land. And yeah, I said it was okay. Conversation carried on. Found out later that this George he was referring to was George Bush Sr., who had just become president of the United States of America. Later on that day, after doing some training and that at the Bible college with some of the students, I decided to go for a walk, have a look around. And it was strange. I was walking around and felt cold, but I was looking up at the neon sign that was on the building, one of the buildings, and it says it was +1 degree. So I thought, well, it was a nice sunny day. It was crisp. My ears were starting to sort of tingle a bit, but it said 1 degree, so I thought, okay, it's just me. Walking around and found there were very few people around, and it was quite confusing really because it was a Saturday and you'd expect the place to be busy, but it wasn't. And eventually found a little shop where I bought a hat, which I've still got today, and put this hat on, and it was like a beanie hat type thing, and put it on, warm my ears, warm my head, felt really comfortable. And later on found another shop, a little Bible shop, Christian book shop that was selling stuff. So I bought a couple of things from there. I was walking around and still my trousers were starting to stick to my legs, and I thought this is a bit weird, but anyway, it's 1 degree still. So not to worry, it's not freezing, so don't worry about it. So I'm walking along and I get to a set of traffic lights, and there's a coach pulls up as I'm walking up past this set of traffic lights, and suddenly this lady comes crashing out of the door of this coach, plows into me, nearly knocking me over. And after we'd exchanged sorries, she then asked me, she said, do I know where such and such church was? And I went, I've got a clue. I don't live here. Got no idea at all. I'm staying at the Bible college at the moment, if that's any help. No, I've got to get to this church. So I've got no idea. I said, well, what's it about? So I thought that we could sort of backtrack to where the Christian bookshop was. They may know who this church was. And she explained to me that she was the great-granddaughter of a very well-known Indian chief. I'm not going to mention who it is. And she was looking for this church because years before, somebody from that church had prayed for one of her relatives. And one of her family was very poorly at the moment, and she brought a handkerchief with her. Turns out that her father was at the conference that I'd been at the breakfast meeting to. I didn't attend the conference, but I was at the breakfast meeting. And she couldn't go to the meeting, so she basically decided to find where this place was. And she had a handkerchief. She brought it all the way from where she come from, and the object was that she wanted the person who had prayed for her family member before to pray over this handkerchief because they couldn't be there in person because they were very poorly. And she'd take the handkerchief back, and if she could lay it upon this person on their head or wherever, then that'd be good. That'd be as good as if they'd prayed for them. And I said, look, it seems a bit unorthodox, really, but I'm quite happy to pray for this handkerchief. I've got no problems with that. So here we are in the middle of Minneapolis, praying over a handkerchief. She went on her way, and it was still felt cold. I looked up at the neon sign, and it was still saying +1 degree. So I went back to the college, and that afternoon we had another meeting, and I was also chatting to some people there, and they were telling me that there was a cold front coming in, and they expected it to be pretty cold that night. But don't worry, because the blower, they've got these industrial type blower things that are in the complex, and there'll be no problem with the cold. So I said, oh, okay. That night, just deviating slightly, that night I looked at the neon sign and it was -20 degrees. And I thought, wow, that's seriously cold. But that afternoon we were chatting and suddenly realised something. The light goes on in the brain cell every now and again. And I suddenly realised that we're in Fahrenheit. Americans are in Fahrenheit, not Celsius. So my +1 was actually +1 Fahrenheit, which is actually -17 Celsius. No wonder my ears were twinkling and my trousers were sticking to my legs and I felt very cold. I just wanted to share that with you today to encourage you, really, because whenever God gets involved and does his thing, you can only sit back in absolute awe. And I'm sure there's loads of you out there who've got similar stories. Okay, not necessarily going to Minneapolis, but of other things that God's done in your life. And as I said the other week, don't remove the old marker stones. Don't forget the things that God's done. There's a lovely song, name your blessings, name them one by one, and just remember what God has done. And that's what I think we need to be doing. We may feel a bit low because we've been locked in for a little while, but just remember all the blessings of God that have happened in your life, and also the blessings that are to come. God hasn't finished yet. There's a new thing happening. There's loads of exciting things going on. So what I'd like to say today is be blessed, be safe, and I'll speak to you soon. Bless you all.